Well, tell us kind of how that relationship started.
So two of the girls, I forget which ones at this point, they were hitching rides, right? And Dennis Wilson picks them up because at this point in time, a lot of the musicians in LA, they were trying to do this whole like down to earth, we're just one of the people kind of things.
Yeah,
Like,
right, right, right.
you know, the mamas and the papas lived in like a nice neighborhood, but nobody had like gates or like, you know, walls around their house. I forget what musician it was, but a pretty popular one. He said he would just wake up sometimes and go downstairs, and there'd be all these people like sitting in his house, just waiting to like hang out with him. People he'd never even met, and it was fun.
Right.
It was cool. You know, they do drugs, smoke some weed, talk, play some music. It was great, and that's why they say that Manson really killed Hollywood because after that, it became a completely different situation where people, especially famous people, became more guarded.
Oh, wow. Wow, interesting.
And so Dennis Wilson picks them up and he's like, oh, these girls are cute. They're wild. They're having a great time. And they introduced him to Manson. Well, they didn't technically introduce him to Manson. They got dropped off. He actually brought them home with him for a while and he like gave them something to eat. And they're like, whoa, this is a mansion. This is incredible.
Right.
So they go back to Manson after and they're like, yo, we met this guy and he's got a mansion and he's a musician. He's like Dennis Wilson of the Beach Boys. And Manson was like, well, he's a musician. I want to be a musician. We must
Yes.
meet this man, right? So he had the girls show him where Dennis Wilson lived. And these people go into it, like broke into his house and they're waiting in there for him because Dennis Wilson's not home. And he pulls up like later that evening and he said Manson walked out and, you know, kind of spread his arms like, welcome home, you know, welcome to your own home. And Dennis Wilson was like, are you going to rob me? Like, are you going to kill me? And Manson was like, no. And he got down on his hands and knees and kissed Dennis Wilson's feet. And
Mm.
and was like, come in, you know, we're all here for you. And at first, Dennis Wilson was like, this is weird. But then he saw, you know, all the girls in his living room and you know, all the drugs. And he was like, okay, like I can chill out here with this for a little bit. And then they kind of just stayed. And he became enamored with Manson and he tried and he fought really hard to get Manson a record deal, even though the rest of the Beach Boys and his record label were like, what are you talking about, man? Like, we can't vouch for this guy. He's not that good and he's off his rocker. But Dennis Wilson was under his spell for a while.
Hmm.
And this happened too, I think, with the Beatles. Didn't they like go to some, I guess, retreat and then they ended up
Yeah,
getting obsessed with this guru, right?
the Maharishi. Yeah, and to be honest with you, Brian Wilson at the same time was having his issues with, I think it was his psychiatrist that had him completely, living in a sandbox in the middle of his house and telling him what to do. Like, seemed to be kind of the sign of the times in the '60s, like you mentioned, was just to kind of turn it all over to the overall seer. And if Dennis Wilson saw that as Manson, because that's a high powered guy to have under your control.
And he did have him under his control. And Charlie couldn't figure out, why do I have this person in my pocket and I still can't get this record deal? And that
Right.
mainly had to do with Terry Melcher. Terry Melcher was born, he's Doris Day's son, right? So he knows about being private and keeping your private life and your personal life separate. He wasn't one of these young rock stars or celebrities who were just coming up and still wanted to be relatable. He was very, very private. And he met Manson a couple times and he was like, I don't see it. Like, I
Right.
just got my own ability to kind of like produce my own bands. My first one was a hit. I'm not trying to bring in this guy as my second one. It's going to make me look stupid. And if it doesn't work out, you know, that's my reputation. And he was also dealing with a lot of stuff with his mom at that time, whose ex-husband or deceased husband had basically stolen all of Doris Day's money. So Terry Melcher is trying to help his mother fight these battles in court and, you know, not be taken prisoner by the
Wow.
IRS
Right.
because her ex-husband hadn't paid her taxes for years and she was very much in debt. So he was going through a lot. He didn't have time for Manson's ridiculousness, whereas Dennis Wilson did, right? Dennis Wilson had nothing else to do. He has no other things really going on in his personal life. Like, what else are you going to do? These are built-in best friends and family who live with you and have sex with you whenever you
Mhm.
want, essentially.
Mhm.
You know, what more could you ask for? But it became an issue when Manson and his family kept crashing Dennis's cars, and these are nice, nice cars. And then I think everybody had syphilis, I believe, at one point. Everybody in that house had syphilis, and Dennis Wilson was like, "Well, I don't know where I got it from." So I'm just going to have to bring everybody to the doctor and get them all treated for syphilis. And I think he said it was like the biggest syphilis bill in the world because he just, and then he started to get annoyed. And at one point, they wouldn't leave. And so he ended up leaving. He left them in that place, and
Hmm.
he got like he got a little like apartment somewhere else. He was just kind of like, I'll wait and hopefully they leave, and they eventually did because Manson was also annoyed when he didn't get his record deal. And once Dennis Wilson couldn't do that for him, he said, well, what can you do for me? Like, my family's
Right.
here. They're happy. They're laying around the pool. They have as much food. How am I going to control happy people? How am I going to make happy people scared to do my bidding when they're just having like the most luxurious life? And that's when he said, let's get out of here and go to Death Valley where everything sucks. And there's no like running water. There's no heat. There's no good food. You literally have only me, and all you can listen to is me for hours and
Wow.
hours.